From the 7th century BC to 1644, the Great Wall was built in China. A massive project, it spans a little over 13,170 miles, an unbelievable human accomplishment that still exists today. It might surprise many that Indiana also once had a massive project, one that spanned hundreds of miles. The year was 1825, and one of the most ambitious projects in Indiana history was started. The goal: to make a canal 4 feet deep, 40 feet wide, and nearly 500 miles long. It would all be accomplished by men with shovels. Crossing untouched wilderness, swamps, and even streams, it would take small boats from Toledo, Ohio, all the way to Evansville, Indiana. And from the Ohio River, boats could go all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. It was pretty epic. But these days, you seldom hear about the Wabash, Erie, or Miami canals. They are virtually lost to history. But if you know where to go, you'll find traces of the past. Beautifully restored passages, and even places to ride the canal and relive a forgotten history. These days, getting the everyday things that we need is pretty easy. Without ever leaving where we live, we can order it online with the push of a button. Computers then contact warehouses. Warehouses pull the product and put it on trucks. Planes may even be involved, bringing things from very, very far away. And then a delivery truck drops it off where you live. But getting what you want wasn't always this easy. Especially if you lived in Indiana in the early 1800s. It was the rugged and wild frontier, with thousands of miles of woods separating you from civilization. The only roads were crude paths that were cut by axes. There were no 4-lane highways to anywhere. Most of the time, if you didn't make or collect something that you needed, you just didn't have it. But if you lived near a major waterway, boats from civilization out east could bring supplies. Fabric, steel tools, and whiskey. Whiskey itself was considered a necessity. It wasn't just a way to forget your troubles. It was a sterile anesthetic for if you were wounded. There were no hospitals, urgent care centers, or Walgreens on the corner. You were your own doctor. But there was a problem. If you decided to live deep in God's country, it might not be near a major waterway. Thus, the boats with supplies could not reach you. Without phones or internet, it was a challenge to coordinate a place to pick up cargo. And without the good roads we have today, it was incredibly difficult or impossible to transport large items cross-country. But someone had a great idea. What if we dig a 4-foot deep ditch, 40 feet wide, fill it with water, and that allowed boats to transport stuff from the Great Lakes all across Indiana. Construction started in 1825. It was an aggressive project, starting at Toledo, Ohio, and spanning 460 miles. It would allow passage all the way to the Gulf of Mexico, once connecting to the Ohio River. There was a lot of money to be made, and if successful, would allow civilization to flourish. Hundreds of men were hired to dig this epic ditch. It was hard, difficult, filthy work, and often crossed yucky swamps. Workers found remains of woolly mammoths, so well preserved in the muck that they cracked open the bones and used the marrow to wax their boots. True story. But not every boat could navigate this narrow channel. It had to be a certain width and be able to use only 4 feet of water. A special boat was constructed that would be pulled by horses or mules, as there were no boats with engines. Along the canal, a small road for the horses and mules was built. It was called a towpath. And with that, there had to be stations along the way to swap out animals and feed them. To accommodate different elevations, there were a series of locks and aqueducts. It was very complicated. But on the plus side, entire towns were built along the canal, and civilization grew and grew. Despite all its issues, it was a great idea, until it wasn't. Trains could transport a great deal more cargo and people than canal boats ever could. And once they were installed in Indiana, it was the beginning of the end for the Great Canal. The biggest problem for the canal was maintenance. It was always filling up with dirt, and the sides often collapsed. With trains, once a track was put down, it was virtually maintenance-free. Trains didn't have a certain problem that all canals did. Muskrats. They would burrow into the side of the canal and let all the water out. Compared to trains, the canal was very expensive and inefficient. As Indiana had borrowed money to build the canal, it put the state in incredible debt to the point of bankruptcy. If it had not been for a banker at Madison, Indiana, the state's assets would have been taken by debt collectors. J.F.D. Lanier not only gave Indiana a loan to pay their canal creditors, but money to stabilize the government. This included money to buy supplies and uniforms for soldiers during the Civil War. It was that bad. The state was eventually able to repay the loan. In Mr. Lanier's memory, his home was made into the first Indiana State Museum site, where the story of his generosity is told on every tour. But what do you do with hundreds of miles of canal that no one needs? In Gibson County, a section of the canal is being reclaimed by nature. You can see structures along its path and whispers of what it used to be. It's now a swamp, just like it started, though you can see remnants of a once great plan. The town of Metamora became a tourist attraction, with a canal boat taking passengers up and down the channel. I have fond memories of coming here and riding the boat pulled by horses. The most unusual feature of the canal is the aqueduct, the only one left in America. It actually crosses another stream. There are shops along the canal, harkening back to the 1800s, when it was a major canal boat town. There's a mill operated by the Indiana State Museum. But when the canal boat broke in half during its annual cleaning, it was too expensive to repair. That canal boat brought hundreds of people to that little town and made countless memories. In the 1980s, Indianapolis turned part of the canal into a park. You could rent paddle boats, take a gondola ride, or just walk along the canal. But at Delphi, Indiana, you can still ride a canal boat at the Wabash and Erie Canal. You can visit a pioneer town and peek into a time gone by. The kids can play on a canal boat. You can visit a museum. But most of all, ride a canal boat up and down the canal. Running during the summer on Saturdays, this one has been fitted with an electric motor. You gracefully pass buildings of the village. See wildlife that graces the waterfront. The water is clear with a slight greenish color due to limestone. You can see to the bottom. You'll pass under 3 bridges. And along the way, imagine what it was like over 200 years ago, when the towns of Indiana were just beginning. Today we get excited when Amazon drops a box at our door. But can you imagine the excitement when a canal boat came to your town in the 1800s? They had things to make your life a little easier, and maybe just a little better. Peaceful canals and riverboat towns, just one more reason to hit the back roads of Indiana.